video, I talked about how on the fanboy side, they don't even seem to want big name wrestling stars anymore. They want the indie jobbers to be on the top. Well, on the promotion side, people have talked about how it seems like the WWE is no longer in the business of making new stars. It's all about the brand now, where they want you to watch WrestleMania simply because it's WrestleMania, where the star power is within the WrestleMania logo, not within the wrestler pointing at the WrestleMania logo. So what it seems like what we have now is like this symbiotic relationship, like the Venom movies, like the symbiotic relationship between the fanboys and the WWE, where the fanboys want the indie jobbers on top, the WWE doesn't want to make new stars, so they put the indie jobbers on top, which makes the fanboys happy, which thereby gives the WWE steady fanboy support. Basically, they want the same thing for different reasons, so they support each other in this symbiotic relationship, like Eddie Brock and Venom. But instead of Eddie Brock with Venom growing out of his shoulder, it's a big neckbeard with Triple H growing out of his shoulder. Meanwhile, us mainstream fans are completely left out of this ecosystem because we still want big name wrestling stars. We don't want the star power to be in the WrestleMania logo. We want the star power to be in the wrestlers. Last video, I talked about how toxic fanboys seem to be destroying what got us into wrestling in the first place. This video, I'll talk about how, in my opinion, the promotions are participating in the destruction. There was a theory that wrestling fans used to have, and that's that the WWE will only push wrestlers who have no chance of challenging the Attitude Era. That they will only push wrestlers who will never come close to Stone Cold, The Taker, The Rock, DX, etc. Wrestlers who have high potential, who have a cool look, a cool gimmick, great mic skills, lots of charisma. Those wrestlers are not going to make it anywhere. What the WWE seems to want is a roster of moderately popular, interchangeable mid-carders that they can cycle in and out of the main event, where a wrestler fits in the pre-show match just as well as he does in the main event. If you put Nakamura in the pre-show match, he fits right in. If you put Nakamura in the main event, he fits right in. Makes no difference because the wrestlers are made to be fully interchangeable. Naomi went to TNA, came back, and it feels like no difference. Andrade went to AEW, came back, and now I'm not even sure where he is, but from a fan's point of view, does it even make a difference? It just feels like everyone is mid, it seems like no one moves the needle, and that seems like just the way the WWE wants it. It seems like what the WWE wants is a collection of interchangeable mid-carders that they can cycle in and out of different spots on the roster. But in order to do that, the wrestlers must become less distinguishable, where you can have a match, and it doesn't really matter who's in the match, because it makes no difference, where the characters are so generic and two-dimensional that they're fully interchangeable. I mean, look at this. Come on. They look like they all got their Halloween costumes from the same store. How are casual fans supposed to distinguish between these wrestlers when they look like alternate versions of the same character in a fighting game? Bayley used to have the hugger gimmick, which was silly, but it was distinguishable. Then she changed her gimmick. So what's her new gimmick? Another costume that looks like it's from the same store, just like Laya Valkyria and everyone else. Wrestlers used to be presented as distinguishable and one of a kind. You're not going to mistake these two for anyone else. Wrestlers were larger than life. Not only could casual fans identify these wrestlers, they could probably tell you about them. That's how much they resonated. In my opinion, there are a number of things that can keep a wrestler mid. One thing is frequent arbitrary and or nonsensical gimmick changes, which in my opinion can stifle a character's momentum and connection with the audience. For example, Carmella. She comes in as this arrogant heel, Miss Money. Then she becomes this goofy babyface with R-Truth in The Fabulous Truth. Then she's this glow girl with Naomi dancing around in the ring. And then she's back to being a heel, calling herself the most beautiful person in the world and wearing a face mask. How are casual fans supposed to connect with characters where instead of natural character progression, they're bouncing around between all these arbitrary gimmicks? Imagine if Stone Cold was treated this way. Imagine if he comes in as the ringmaster, then he becomes Stone Cold. But then right after that, he's this goofy babyface with R-Truth in the Stone Cold Truth. Then he's dancing around the ring with Naomi, and then he's back to being a bad guy, wearing a face mask. If from 1996 to 2000, Stone Cold was bouncing around between different characters like this, do you think he would have gotten as big as he did? Another thing that can stifle a character is not necessarily changing the gimmick, but watering it down. Like, remember when they had Sasha Banks dancing around in the ring with Rick Swann, completely contradicting her character? What about the time they got Shorty G to dress up like Robert Roode, like he's Robert Roode's mini-me, and they made him into a tag team, walking out to the ring just the same? Imagine if they did that to Stone Cold. Imagine if they got some little jobber, dressed him up like Stone Cold, like he's Stone Cold's mini-me, and they made him into a tag team. It's the Stone Cold duo. In my opinion, that would have completely watered down the Stone Cold gimmick. In my opinion, another thing that stifles a character's momentum is simply taking them off TV. The Iconics win the tag team titles at WrestleMania, but then after that, other than a few backstage segments, they're pretty much off TV. Nakamura wins the US title, then right after that, he's pretty much off TV. I remember even fanboys were even complaining about that. Like, how can you have someone win the title and then they're off TV? Imagine if they did this to Stone Cold. Imagine if, hypothetically, Stone Cold wins the title at WrestleMania 14. The Attitude Era has begun. But then right after that, he's off TV. He's not on Raw anymore. What the hell happened to Stone Cold? In my opinion, that would have put his momentum to a grinding halt. And what's up with wrestlers having to share the spotlight after winning the title? After Becky Lynch's first title win, there's this widely distributed picture of her celebrating with Triple H. After Stephanie Vacker's recent win, Triple H walks out to the ring and gives Stephanie Vacker a hug. My question is, what's the point of that? How does that help the wrestler? How does that put the star power in the wrestler? Let me put it this way. Stone Cold wins the title at WrestleMania 14. The Attitude Era has begun. But imagine if, hypothetically, after that, a WWE executive walks down to the ring and is like, "I'm so proud of you, Steve." And Steve's like, "Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I've waited for this for such a long time, and that's the bottom line." You know, if it happened like that, how does that help the Stone Cold character in any way? How does that put Stone Cold over in any way? In my opinion, when a wrestler wins a title, it should be all about them at the top of the mountain. If you have somebody walking down to the ring like, "I'm proud of you," in my opinion, that's putting the wrestler beneath somebody. I'm guessing this may be another way for the WWF to put the wrestlers below the brand. This is what it looks like on the WWE webpage. Notice that Stephanie Vacker is the more distant person in the video thumbnail. She does not look like the center of attention. But in my opinion, mainstream fans don't want the star power to be with the brand. Mainstream fans want the star power to be with the wrestlers. So if the rosters are just a collection of interchangeable mid-carders, in my opinion, that's taking away something that got people into wrestling to begin with. Here's the thing though, among the sea of indie jobbers, there still are high potential wrestlers out there. There still are wrestlers with lots of charisma. There still are wrestlers with lots of mic skills. But if the WWE is no longer in the business of making new stars, what happens to these wrestlers? What happens to someone like LA Knight, who has a lot of charisma, who's the type of wrestler where you can give him the microphone, not tell him what to say, but he can still go out there and captivate the crowd? What happens to wrestlers like that? What happens, in my opinion, is they're not going to make it anywhere. I mean, sure, they might give LA Knight a push where they give him a storyline and some attention, but it's always going to get kept in check and it's always going to fizzle out. And when it fizzles out, in my opinion, it's not because it was mishandled. In my opinion, it's by design because the WWE is no longer in the business of making new stars. To put it in football terms, for a wrestler like LA Knight, in my opinion, they might let him get some first downs, but they'll never let him score the touchdown. LA Knight doesn't score the touchdowns. Ricky Starks, Seth Rollins, and Io Sky, they score the touchdowns. The wrestlers who, in my opinion, have no chance of challenging the Attitude Era, they score the touchdowns. By the way, Seth Rollins recently had to relinquish the world title. And there was a number one contenders match. Did LA Knight win that number one contenders match? No, of course not. You may be upset about LA Knight being pushed aside again, but are you surprised? The WWE strategy seems to be right in our face. They are literally advertising John Cena as the last real champion. But in my opinion, mainstream fans want what the Macho Man wants, and that's the cream of the crop. They want larger than life stars. They want real world champions. They want high potential talent being given real pushes and scoring touchdowns. So in my opinion, if you're not going to have any real world champions anymore, that's taking away something that got people interested in wrestling in the first place. So the theory is that the WWE will only substantively push wrestlers who have no chance of challenging the Attitude Era. In other words, we have champions like Seth Rollins and Io Sky. But what about AEW? Why can't they be the ones that get it done? I mean, they got this big TV deal and a big budget. Why can't they be the ones to be what the WWE used to be, but no longer is? Why can't they be the ones to give us that larger-than-life product? Why can't they be the ones to give us the next Rock, the next Stone Cold, the next Cena? Like, where is it? There is no it, because in my opinion, the AEW completely fumbled the ball with its strategic approach. Instead of going big, they went niche. Instead of being an epic, larger-than-life product that makes the WWE look childish, they made themselves look silly and childish. Let's go back to the first episode of Dynamite. What was the big title match of the first episode of Dynamite? It was Riho, a 90-pound schoolgirl character, beating Nyla Rose to become champion. And then before that, you had Sammy Guevara walking out cosplaying as a panda. Think about it. That was the first impression that AEW decided to make. And they wonder why viewers didn't come back? You put that shit in episode 1 and you expect people to come back for episode 2? Contrast that with the first episode of Nitro. What was the big title match of the first episode of Nitro? It was Hulk Hogan versus the Big Boss Man. And during the match, Lex Luger made his shocking return to WCW. The guy was just at SummerSlam, and now he's on Nitro. And the other title match before that was Sting versus Ric Flair. Think about that. WCW centered its first Nitro show around big-name superstars, pushing the slogan, WCW is where the big boys play. Then, of course, later, Alundra Blaze shows up on Nitro, throws the belt in the trash can, and WCW is also where the big girls play. WCW went big, AEW went niche. That's the difference. AEW fumbled the ball. So instead of going big, AEW went niche. Instead of being the larger-than-life product that the WWE used to be, they became an even more niche version of what the WWE currently is. And by being such a niche product, in my opinion, they're delivering us an embarrassing style of content that we used to only expect from indie promotions. I've talked about all the silly stuff I've seen at indie wrestling promotions, with wrestlers dancing around, wrestling stuffed animals, doing anime and video game moves, and basically geeking out in the ring. Now, you may not have seen the indie matches I've seen, but likewise, I probably haven't seen the indie matches you've seen. But that's just the point. That silly stuff used to stay local. It seemed like there was this unspoken thing where, yeah, a wrestler can do all that silly stuff while they're in the indies, while they're still developing their personas, their techniques, while they're basically in training. But by the time a wrestler hits the big leagues, they're supposed to be past that. By the time a wrestler goes to a mainstream promotion, they're expected to be a full performance wrestler who is there to make wrestling look good and is no longer acting like a newbie. In my opinion, AEW had the opportunity to be a larger-than-life product, but instead decided to present themselves as a goofy, big-budget indie promotion. Here they were, fighting with arcade machines around the ring, and for some reason Rusev is in this match. Can you believe he went from feuding with John Cena to this? Currently, they are still doing Carly Cameron's Sasha Banks puppet thing, where recently the puppet was celebrating with a cake, the interviewer seems to be treating the puppet like a real person, they start dancing together, then the real Sasha Banks comes out, pushes the puppet's face in a cake, and then the puppet starts crying. This kind of stuff, combined with a whole bunch of unnecessary hardcore matches, seems to be AEW's vision for the product. Can you imagine trying to get people interested in wrestling when that's what the product looks like? Can you imagine convincing someone to watch AEW Dynamite, but when they turn on the TV, that's what they see? That's embarrassing. In my opinion, in order for the wrestling product to grow, it has to be show-offable. It has to be the type of product where you can show it off. Be like, hey guys, check this out, it's really cool. And they're like, wow, it really is cool. Can you do that with wrestling right now? No. In my opinion, by making themselves look like big-budget indie promotions, the WWE and AEW are presenting a product that's embarrassing to mainstream fans and embarrassing for them to talk about. During the boom periods, one of the coolest things was how mainstream wrestling was, where you could be at a random place and just talk to people about wrestling because it was so popular and everyone was into it, where you would just see random people wearing NWO shirts everywhere. It felt good to be a wrestling fan. We felt proud to be wrestling fans. So making wrestling this indie-looking product, in my opinion, is taking away something that people liked about wrestling in the first place. But with all that being said, think about how good things could be. Imagine if, hypothetically, you were in charge of WWE or AEW, and you were strongly in the business of making new stars, and you were determined to make stars bigger than the Attitude Era ever had. If you were in charge, and that was your goal, don't you think the product would look a lot different? The indie jobber era would be over, wouldn't it? Every boom period was led by big name players like Hogan, Austin, Rock, and you would be looking for your person, your superhero come to life that you could build your business around. And instead of getting pushes, talent like LA Knight would now be given real pushes. Stone Cold Steve Austin took the ball and he ran with it. We would give LA Knight the ball and say, you score that freaking touchdown. Instead of a roster filled with indie jobbers, we would have a larger-than-life roster. We would be looking at Drew McIntyre. We would be looking at Lance Archer. We would be looking at Wardlow. We would be looking at Jade Cargill. We would be looking at Camille from NWA. We would be looking at who can be in our roster of action heroes come to life. And if we can deliver a product like that, in my opinion, that's a product that we can show off to people and get people back into wrestling. That's the opportunity that AEW had. Imagine the possibilities.